Oh, nice work, Mike.
He's a man efficient in his schedule.
All right, welcome to the MSAD 51 Board of Directors meeting. I will say that I am confused on what day it is because today was day 2 of school. It's Thursday. It's a confusing week, so September 2nd, 2021. This evening, we do not have any recognition besides the fact that school is open, and we have welcomed all of our children back into school. Our staff is here, and we are continuing on Tuesday. So I just wanted to recognize that we have accomplished and completed the first week of school, except for our pre-K and kindergartners. Next item on our agenda this evening is approval of minutes. Do I have a motion for the August 16th, 2021?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Okay, all in favor? Thank you. And next we have our public comment section of the evening. And I just wanted to remind people of the purpose of our public comment. Last meeting, we had a resident that chose to use our public comment for recital of the pledge and the Lord's Prayer. And I wanted to remind everyone that the reason that we have public comment is to comment on the business of the board. And that is it. It is not about using that as a performance space. I really would like to make sure that people understand that this is a meeting for the business of the board in the public, and that and that it's not a debate or a conversation. We welcome constructive comments that will help the board more fully understand the speaker's point of view and the issue that they are bringing forth to us. So I just wanted to remind people of that. We also will be sticking to 3 minutes and ask that you state your name and your place of residence, not an address, but just town. So I welcome anyone that has an item that is directly related to the business of the board to approach the podium and speak.
Is this on? Okay, perfect. Lori Batchelder, North Yarmouth. I'm not here tonight to discuss the merits or my personal views on the equity inclusion work being done. I'm here to discuss the motion on tonight's school board meeting agenda to move the ELSC ad hoc committee from a special committee to other committee, and a motion to amend the bylaws and bring membership appointments to other committees in line with standing committees, which means the chair makes the appointments. It is my understanding that the board was given their agenda packet only 2 days ago. It is my understanding that the board is typically given very little notice about any agenda item, and many times are asked to be ready to make a discussion or vote on an agenda item with just a few days' notice. I do not believe the board has the adequate time to make informed decisions on such a sensitive and highly charged topic as equity and inclusion. Any movement forward needs to be carefully considered and parameters in place. Even though I'm only one person delivering this message, I speak for many, many members of this community that we want a committee that is made up of members with diverse opinions. Members that may embrace the path the Equity Committee is currently taking, members that oppose the current path, and members who are somewhere in the middle. This is the only way we can ensure all views are being represented on a committee that is making such important recommendations to the board. As you've heard from many of us in the community, there's a feeling that the committee is not diverse and that most, if not all, the members have the same viewpoints and ideology. This does not seem very inclusionary to me. Continuing down this path is only going to divide our community. All of you board members represent me and my children, and I'm respectfully asking one of you, as my representative, to make a motion to table this agenda item. Table until the board is given adequate time to understand the full undertaking to change the designation of the ELSC to other committee. Table until details regarding committee member qualifications, composition, and terms have been outlined. As far as I know, the board has not adopted any stipulating parameters for other committees. Table it until after until it is understood how this may change the scope of the work for the Equity Committee, which clearly states the ELSC scope is to develop an equity plan with focus on racial equity. Table it until we can ensure a broad and diverse membership. In the last few years, the current ad hoc committee has been unsuccessful in its current operations. It has done nothing but divide this community. It is time for a reset. It is time to hear from the community you serve. It is time for you to move this community forward in a way that represents all of our voices, not just the ones you put forth. By voting on this tonight without any guiding principles, you are putting the cart before the horse. So please motion to table this agenda item.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Kerrycinquette of Cumberland. I have 3 students in the MSAD 51 district, and I just wanted to first say thank you and hats off to a tremendous start to the school year. We're all very excited about it. I'm also here tonight to offer my family's support for the work done by the Equity Committee. We believe that creating an anti-racist and inclusive community is morally right and consistent with the MSAD 51 mission of guiding students to attain their personal best. We further want to show our support and trust that the committee and board chair have the best interest of our district in mind as they select new members. In our beautiful and peaceful town, it can be difficult to recognize the inequities that many throughout our country and here in our town suffer. These inequities do exist, and we are thankful for the work of the committee to address them. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Brian O'Connor. I'm a parent of a 7th grader and a 6th grader in the district. They're here with me today. And I'm sad. I'm sad from watching all the horrifying things happening in the world and seeing people hell-bent on making life harder. I'm proud to live in this community. And I'm disappointed to see the wheels of white supremacy in motion right here in my own hometown. I'm disappointed to see bigotry disguised as concern for process. I trust this administration. I trust the school board. I trust this equity steering committee to move forward with this critical work as it's laid out. It's clear that much work, much listening, and much careful consideration has gone into making this community stronger and more diverse. Please know that this committee's work has my support and my family's support, and I thank you so much for the work that's been done.
Thank you.
I'm Gretchen McCloy. I live in Cumberland. I have 2 boys at MIW. I first want to thank you for the vote last month to approve masks in our schools. I work in education and my husband is in healthcare, and we firmly are very supportive of our students wearing masks as long as it's needed. I work in a school and I can't tell you how relieved I was to know that at my school everyone would be masked also. So for all of our educators, thanks on all of our behalfs for helping to keep us safe. A quick point on equity. As I said, I work in another school, and the equity work is difficult and hard in every school district, and I really appreciate the work that's being done. I also know we've struggled to find a way for all voices to be heard, and I just hope that as we move forward with this equity work, we can create spaces and places for good dialogue to happen safely. That's not necessarily in this forum. I love speaking in public, but this is a hard thing to do for a lot of people, and the voices we want to hear are maybe not even to be here at these settings. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, board members and student representatives. My name is Will Sachs. I live in Cumberland and have 2 boys at GMS. I'm here tonight for one reason only, to urge each and every board member sitting before me to put the children of MSAD 51 first when it comes to child health and mental health matters. and appoint a board-certified, actively practicing pediatrician as a district physician. I want to be clear. I am not here to litigate the past or demonize the action of last year's board. I am also not here to debate whether or not appointing a board-certified, actively practicing pediatrician is an expert-identified best practice predominantly followed by our peer districts. That evidence is clear in the correspondence I have sent to the board along with other concerned parents. There is no debate. The American Academy of Pediatrics and the American Medical Association have spoken, as of our peer districts who dutifully follow this guidance and apply common sense. Regardless of the membership of the pandemic response panel, this board must recognize that this pandemic is not the only health and mental health issue facing the children of MSAD 51. Athletics-related concussions, diabetes, drug use, mental health, sexual health, and gender identity come to mind, along with many more. When this district makes policy decisions impacting these matters, our children deserve a clinician who will advocate for them with a profound and meaningful understanding of what they're facing, an understanding that can only be gained by treating children all day, every day. Lastly, I'm speaking to each board member personally. If you have school-age children or grandchildren, if that child was sick or was going through the toughest health or mental health moments of their lives, where would you take them? Would you take them to your doctor? Or like me, Julie, and most parents in this district, would you take them to their pediatrician? Is it because, like me, when the most important people to you on this planet need medical care, you want to know that you are speaking with an expert clinician who has dedicated their professional life to treating and caring for children and works in a practice where every colleague has made that same commitment? I am here tonight as a parent, asking you to apply the same importance and same standard of care to my children and their classmates as you do to yours. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone. My name's Katie. I live in Cumberland. This is one of my two children in the district. I'm going to read a letter from a friend who couldn't be here tonight and also add my words of support of this specific letter. Dear members of the MSAD 51 Board of Directors, I'm writing in support of the Equity Committee and tonight's action item of making it an other committee of the board rather than ad hoc committee. If it would not mean bringing my second and fifth graders with me, I would be at the meeting in person. I encourage you to remember the importance of the leadership part of the full name of the ELSC. It is my expectation and that of my children and family that the committee will provide leadership on equity. Leadership is bold. Not everyone will agree with decisions made, and there should be an opportunity to hear from those who disagree, but I trust the board chair to appoint committee members who will actually move equity work forward. I fully expect that this will include continuing to prioritize equity in the overall goals of the school board and setting a specific goal of adopting an equity policy before the end of this school year. I hope we will not prioritize the comfort of dominant cultures, whether defined racially, by gender, sexual orientation, identity, etc., over progress for our students. Thank you for your consideration and thank you for your hard work to open schools 5 days a week this fall. From my perspective and that of my kids, everything has gone smoothly, and they're happy to be back. Sincerely, Annika Hole of Cumberland. And I add my 2 cents as well, and would just really underline the idea that appointing people who actively don't support equity to the Equity Committee is foolhardy. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Like everyone. I'll start with my name, I guess. Sarah Allenby, I live in Cumberland. I am a parent of 2 Mableye Wilson kids. Just to start, a quick thank you for a successful start of the school year. I'm here to show my support for the Equity Committee and our district's ongoing commitment to equity work. I agree wholeheartedly with Katie's statement about the need to have folks who support the work on the committee doing the work. In addition, I would add that with some confidence that one of the reasons why this auditorium isn't filled with people sharing their support for this work is that I think most people in our district would honestly be shocked and horrified that this is even in question. That teaching our kids to treat people equitably and to treat everyone in our district equitably is even being debated. I've been following this since the beginning, and it still boggles my mind that this can even be a matter of discussion. On another note, I am a Jewish member of the community, and I'm disappointed, to put it lightly, that the first day of kindergarten falls on one of the most important days of the Jewish New Year. It's hard enough that our kids need to miss these days in school every year, which every year my kids do, and it's just the way it is, and that's understandable, but I appreciate that apologies were issued, and I would just ask for more awareness in the future, not just for Jewish families, but for any other religious minorities. There's a lot of important observances that deserve just as much attention or consideration as Christian holidays. Lastly, I'll just add that I'm appalled that when I asked one of the board members to put on his mask when we were inside the building tonight, he met me with an eye roll. That's not how you treat your stakeholders. It was disrespectful and uncalled for. And my 6-year-old can wear a mask. I'm sure that you can do it too without needing any eye rolls. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Mary Carbone. I'm a resident of Cumberland. I wanted to start by thanking the board for requiring masks for all individuals. It was a smart decision that will keep our students and faculty healthier and will help keep our schools open for 5 days of in-person instruction. I would also like to thank the members of the Equity Committee for their commitment to creating an anti-racist inclusive community. It is not enough to encourage students to live by the golden rule or treat others as you want to be treated. I'm a teacher in a different district, and as a teacher, when I give students an assignment, I don't just say, turn in a good assignment, or you know what a good report looks like. I give clear and explicit expectations so that students know what good means and what good looks like. Teachers, students, and staff need to know what it means and what it looks like to have an anti-racist, inclusive school environment. The work the Equity Committee is doing in this regard is invaluable and long overdue. I wholeheartedly trust the Equity Committee and the board to appoint members who will serve our district in its equity goals. Thank you for your commitment to our students and the long hours you spend serving our community.
Thank you. Is there anyone else from the public that would like to speak? Okay. Thank you to everyone that showed up tonight and shared your thoughts. I know this is a busy week, so thank you for coming the second day of school. So moving on, we have communications. And the first item under communications is board delegate to the MSMA Fall Conference. And I'm going to look at Kevin because I remember last year you were the delegate, and I wondered if you wanted to share a little bit of your experience. I do remember that last year there was a long meeting.
You see me winding up to get ready. I guess I've been on the board a little while, so I'd always heard about this conference. It was the first time that I went last year. And it was shockingly long, but let me begin with that piece of it. I think it was a Friday. It was a fantastic conference. And there were a number of things that within our board we do not get exposed to. There were some folks that came in and spoke to the group on a number of topics. There was the most poignant speaker, and Ann, you may have been there as well, was the judge from New Hampshire speaking about his son and the need to focus on mental health in our students and in each communities. And it had a profound impact on me. Anybody who's interested in going into this, this is not throwaway time, though. I think that as you look through that agenda, you're going to find things that resonate with you. That ability to invest your time in this, I think, serves the board well and serves any individual well who participates. I don't know if that's what you wanted, but.
No, that's great.
I mean, I would add, as being the representative before you, that it's also then voting in the state, on the state motions that they have for the state board goals.
So,
But also everything else.
Thank you, Ann and Kevin, both for that recap and also for attending those 2 years. So in our packets, there was a document that had a link to the items that were up for discussion and for voting within that. So what we need from our board is someone to volunteer to attend that evening and be a representative from our board. Do we need to have that tonight, or can that be offline?
That can be next meeting.
Okay. So by next meeting, if anyone is interested, if you could please email me and let me know so we can pass along the appropriate paperwork and everything that needs to go along with it. Does anybody have any questions? Yeah, Mike.
When is it?
Well, I don't,
thing.
it was on the thing, but I don't know off the top of my head.
No, it's not on.
Oh, it wasn't?
Bailey's thing, no.
Well, that wasn't very helpful, was it?
No, exactly.
I don't know off the top of my head, but I will get back to you and let everybody know.
I think you should commit without knowing.
No way. Oh, I found it. You have to click through. It's Saturday, October 23rd.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions? Okay.
I forgot, was it Saturday? Oh, yeah.
I just remember getting lots of texts from you saying, it's still going.
A lot of coffee.
Okay, anything else for communications?
I did have something to add.
Go ahead, Ann.
I just wanted to take a moment to address the public comment that happened at our last meeting, August 16th. Last school year, it became widely recognized that I do not participate in the Pledge of Allegiance, and I will continue to sit until our country is free of discrimination and bias, and until every person has access to the same privilege and opportunity that I do. I will not change my stance, no matter how many times members of the public may take my picture sitting down or do things to set me up to remain seated. I won't change my intent because I am dedicated to our board, to our community, and to our country. As James Baldwin said, I love America more than any country in this world, and exactly for this reason, I insist on the right to criticize her perpetually. I also would like to address the fact that the Lord's Prayer was recited during a public school board meeting, as Tyler had already mentioned. I ask for everyone to consider how they would feel if it wasn't a Christian prayer, instead an Islamic, Hindu, Jewish, or any other non-Christian religion. Our duty is to serve all students, to study all religions and all experiences. I respect everyone's individual beliefs, and I acknowledge that religion and spirituality guide a person and help them make sense of the world. Our country is not a theocracy. Churches and state are separate, which we need to respect as a public school district. Thank you.
Thank you, Ann. Anybody else have anything they'd like to share for communications? Okay. So moving on to presentations, we have a presentation from Superintendent Porter for Grilly Gross Green update.
Yes, I think we're going to put it up on the screen.
Grab your mic.
Oh, here, I might need to adjust this. I don't know if we can hear you.
I'm going to wait for it to go up on the screen. What's that? Yeah, I think I did pick that one, Derek.
It's here on the screen.
It's here down. Yeah. So as the board talked about at the last meeting, asked that the administration bring forward an update to the Really Goes Green plan each and every meeting. for the foreseeable future. So tonight is the first update to the Really Goes Green plan since it was adjusted a few weeks ago by the board. So I'm going to be giving you today's update for September 2nd. Do you need me to do anything else, Stark, to get it up on the screen?
Yeah, I'm trying to. I'm going to try it on it myself.
If you want me to put it on some other setting, let me know. So for the update, and I'm sorry for those of you who are in the audience that can't see this right now, but basically the overall goal of the Really Goes Green plan, this is just a summary of what has already been discussed and approved. Basically the why is keeping kids and staff in school, in person, full-time, the entire school year. That is the overarching goal, and obviously there's plenty of sub-goals that come underneath that. Health and safety, academics, and social emotional health are the three pillars that support that why, but that is the why for the 21-22 school year. And the how is layered prevention. So the Center for Disease Control talks about having multiple layers of prevention and helping to make sure that our students and our staff are staying in school full-time and are out of school as little as possible for quarantines or having to be doing contact tracing, and certainly to make sure that we're not closing any of our schools to in-person learning for any period of time this year. So in order to do that, our district, obviously this is just summarizing what the board has already approved, has looked at a layered prevention model, which is many aspects of keeping students and staff safe and ready for learning. So the layered prevention mitigation strategies, we have many, and again, this is just a review, asking everyone to daily screen before they come to school, consistently and correctly using masks for as long as we need to do that. And in the plan, obviously, I'll be bringing a formal review to the board of specifically about the mask wearing on October 18th, if not before, if necessary. Physical distancing, the CDC recommends pooled testing, if not distancing. We are trying to distance as much as possible in the classrooms, but we are not locked into distancing if it detracts from the learning process. And that's the message that we have given our teachers, that if it's getting in the way of learning in your classroom, then by all means, don't do it. If it makes sense to distance and you can do it feasibly in the classroom, then by all means do that as well. So it really depends on what's going on in the classroom at that time. But our district has opted, as the board obviously approved at the last meeting, to enroll in pooled testing. The state no longer requires that we have a percentage of people who are interested. So we can have any number of people interested, and we can still go ahead with pooled testing no matter what the numbers are. So that was a good change from the state from last year. So that's the pooled testing. Today I sent out a letter to all parents and guardians and staff asking if they would be interested in giving consent. If parents are interested in doing that, they should look at that letter, and we have the links now in the letter for both Binex testing and pooled testing. And as soon as we have, we've given that a few days and we've got things set up, then we will begin pooled testing conceivably in the middle of September is the first date that we're looking at. Cleaning, sanitation, and ventilation. We've talked a lot about that over the last 18 months, and we continue to work on that. Hand washing will continue. Contact tracing is continuing, but there's a lot of new incentives, as I introduced at the last meeting, about how people can not be in close contact, or if they are in close contact, not be quarantined. The Department of Education has approved a bunch of new ways that students and staff do not have to be quarantined this year, which is great news for obviously keeping us in person every day. Binex now testing, so if there's symptomatic students and staff and students and staff that have symptoms during the school day, they can ask for a test if there's consent given by the parents to participate in the Buy Next Now testing, and we have that link as well for parents who are still thinking about it in the letter that went out today as well. That's also in there. It's just a quick form letting us know that you consent to it. If your child's not feeling well, we can get a rapid test and get results within an hour, so that parents are not having to do that and students aren't having to quarantine for 10 days. And then finally, vaccination rates. The Department of Education is requiring, and actually they just sent it out today, that we now post or report, I should say, all of our vaccination numbers, and I do have our latest vaccination numbers for students and staff that I'll be talking about in this presentation. So again, briefly just summarizing data and metrics for adjusting the plan. These are the areas that we would be looking at if adjustments are being recommended. So at every board meeting, I will have some sort of recommendation at the end of this presentation or this update to the board, whether or not there's an adjustment that needs to be put forward or not. Things that we look at are current guidance from the Department of Education and the CDC in Maine, community transmission data, consultation with local health professionals, and that's the Superintendents COVID Advisory Group, along with other professionals and other representative stakeholders. We have 20 people that serve on that advisory group. COVID cases associated with the district, quarantines associated with the district, MSAD 51 staff vaccination data and student vaccination data. And then once we get pooled testing up and running, we'll be also reporting on our pooled testing data, and it will just be numbers, but basically numbers of any positive cases that we identify through pooled testing, and then the number of participants as well, and that would be it. So none of the information that we're revealing has any identifiable data, but it's just information that we're using to assess our own district's metrics. And again, just for the more for the public, and we'll be posting this on our website, obviously this presentation and every update that is done for the foreseeable future will go up on our website under the Really Goes Green link on our main site. Will take you right to all this information. This is the full roster of the people that are serving right now on the Really Goes Green plan. We have 3 external medical professionals. One was added just since the last meeting, and trying to get external medical professionals on our in our group to make sure that we are hearing from those in the healthcare field, as has been asked. And I won't read through all of these, but most of them are from the last meeting and shouldn't look any different. So as of today, September 2nd, I'm reporting the update to the board. There has been no change in state or CDC guidance, Department of Education guidance at this point. So this is a chart you'll see at every update I do for the foreseeable future at every meeting. I'll be putting the same chart together unless we have other data that comes along that's helpful, and I'll certainly report that. But there has been no change in state guidance since the last board meeting. The county transmission status has changed from moderate to high. If you go back, there are, just to make sure that everybody knows, it's low, moderate, substantial, and high. So this is one of 4 areas that the federal CDC has determined for Cumberland County. We were at moderate, and now we are at the high range as of this week. The number of COVID cases in MSAD 51, and we start with the beginning of the school year. We don't go back to last year. If people are interested in looking at the 110 cases or so that we had last year, we have them archived on our COVID information dashboard, which is located on our website under the Really Goes Green COVID information, that you can go to our link and get all this. But day 2 of school, and we have no COVID cases that we are aware of and no quarantines. I will clarify that if there were quarantines prior to the beginning of school that were in the community, we do not count them as part of our district. And I know that there are some students in our district right now who are quarantining as a result of something that occurred during the latter part of the summer, and we don't report those. That is not something that was part of the school year or it happened before the school year. Student vaccination data, as of today, and I'm gonna talk about this for just a minute because I think it's very important. The state registry has estimated that our student vaccination data for all eligible students ages 12 to 18 is somewhere between 85 and 89%. I believe that the registry pulls the information from COVID shots, from fully vaccinated students in that age range from our 2 towns, and that's how they receive or get their estimate. They get their information in turn from all the providers who are authorized to provide the COVID vaccine. So that's where that estimate comes from. So I want to talk about the fact that our estimate from the state and the fact that our raw numbers in our district as of today are discrepant. And they were actually quite a bit lower even a few days ago when I first put out this presentation to the board, or a couple days ago. As school has begun, we're getting a lot more response from families. I did put out a plea this week in another letter asking for parents to, obviously it's optional, but to please provide the information if they're comfortable doing so on their child if they have been fully vaccinated. So those numbers went up from the 30s at the middle school and high school, and now they're up in the 40s. Our nurses continue processing the information, and we log that information into our database, our student database. So I expect those numbers will continue rising over the next week as families are providing that information to our nurses. So I do believe that the percentage is probably closer to what the state is estimating as they've been pulling provider vaccines. So I think hopefully by the next board meeting, I would be very surprised if those numbers aren't quite a bit closer to the 85 to 89%. But I just want to stress that we don't have that information yet. And we know that there'll be families that won't be comfortable providing that, and that's fine. There is incentives, obviously, that families have to weigh about providing that information to us at this point. The staff vaccination data, we've been able to get that information from our staff. We've been back for a week already. And again, it's optional. Staff do not have to provide this information to us, but there's incentives for doing so. And we've had a lot of staff that just wanted to come forward and make sure that they gave us that updated information. We've also processed our new staff over the summer, and so that's why these numbers had to be updated within the last few days for new hires, and also people who have retired or moved on. So 77% of our staff in our district have been fully vaccinated. Those do not include temporary employees, substitutes, coaches, seasonal employees. That's just our staff members that are here with us each day. So we have 403 staff. So district-wide is any department that serves the whole district: transportation, custodial, maintenance, the district office. We have a number of staff that work in all of the schools, a whole group of staff that work in all of the schools, such as our psychology, psych department, our school psychologists and psych providers, et cetera. So 64% of our district-wide staff in our district are fully vaccinated. At the high school, 80% of our staff are vaccinated. Again, this is based on the information that staff are giving us. GMS 6-8, 73%, GMS 4-5, 79%, and Mabel I. Wilson School, 70%. I think it's fair to say those numbers are probably higher than what we have here, again, because it is optional. And then pool testing data, as I mentioned, we will start posting that data, and I'll start providing that data updates once the pool testing program begins in mid-September. So the superintendent's recommendation, so in the end, it's my recommendation to the board, but I just want to say that the advisory committee, the advisory group that we have that I mentioned earlier, has a huge part to play in my recommendation, and I take their advice very seriously. We did have a meeting about a week ago and looked at the topics that you're seeing on this slide right here. First of all, I asked the advisory group for advice on setting data benchmarks. That was something that the board had raised. And again, remember, this is a rolling recommendation. So just because something isn't recommended tonight doesn't mean that 2 weeks from now At your next meeting, I'm not recommending something different, but this is as of September 2nd. The advisory group advice, and these are summaries, this is not a transmittal of everything that was talked about, but feeling of the advisory group was that not at this time. There was a feeling that the Delta variant needs to run its course at this time. There's a lot of reports right now that the Delta variant could be at some point exhausting itself in the United States as it has in many other countries. We're kind of one of the last countries in line, I think, for some of the variants. So my recommendation is based on the advisory group's advice not to set any benchmarks right now. In other words, I think there was discussion at the last board meeting about if such and such percentage of students at the high school and staff at the high school were fully vaccinated, would that make a difference in recommending no masks? I'm just giving an example, but I think that's one that did come up. And again, my recommendation tonight is not at this time. Doesn't mean, again, we're not constantly looking at these recommendations, and we will be at every board meeting. Removing the mask requirement, again, the advisory group advice at this time is that we should be following the CDC advice on this. The Delta variant is, there's too many unknowns at this point still, and based on the metrics and data review, including the transmission status of moving to a high status in Cumberland County, that was certainly a concern, and the fact that we don't have a full accounting of all of our vaccine data yet. Adjustments to the Greeley Goes Green plan. So based on the advice of the group, there were no other adjustments that the advisory group gave me, and I took their recommendation. Again, there was a lot of discussion about the Delta variant, especially from the physicians who serve on that group. They were spent a lot of time explaining the Delta variant and the context of public areas and public places and the importance of masking. And finally, the last topic that the group briefly discussed was parent information nights. Sometimes they're known as open houses. We've been calling them parent information nights for a while now in our district, and whether or not those information nights should be in person or remote. They're coming right up. Actually, all of them are in the month of September. So we obviously wanted to get, I needed to get some advice on how we were going to proceed with that. The administrators were looking for more advice on that as well. And at first our conversation was mixed, whether or not there were other ways that we could provide the information nights, whether it was staggered in person. But at the end of the conversation, you know, the advice was, and again, I think even the doctors who had kind of talked about what does this look like, we're certainly recommending, along with pretty much most, if not everyone in the group, or most people in the group, that in-person events of these magnitudes should not be recommended at this time as a precaution. I also checked in with neighboring school districts right in our immediate vicinity and asked them what they had planned to do about parent information nights, open houses, and they were following a similar path that we were, that they were taking precautions, that it was not worth the risk, and if there are other ways that we can do this, you know, I think that was our plan. So we have been offering, and my recommendation is really more of what we've also been doing, is to offer a lot of meet and greets. A lot of teachers have been doing that over the last couple of weeks, where they can do that without inviting huge amounts of people in. They can stagger people in and out of the classroom in small groups, and we have had a number of teachers at the elementary level who have done a meet and greet. We've also given tours, many tours. I believe at Mabel I. Wilson School, at least 70 tours now have been given for parents that have asked for a tour to go see the classroom, to go to walk with the principal. Those have been granted, and I want to give special thanks to our administration for making all those possible, and to our teachers who have come in before the school year began, and also have done a lot of meet and greets in the month of August. So I think a lot of that, for anyone that would like to, for a parent that wants to see their child's classroom with their child come into the building, there are opportunities to do that. Just please contact your child's school. And again, I've given you the why as to why the recommendation is that we do the remote parent information nights this year again, supplementing with the meet and greets and tours for those who would like to see, do some sort of in-person. So again, the Delta variant is a concern, came up from the advisory group, and we've been able to come up with other ways that we can do some in-person ways for parents to be able to come into the building and visit and not have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people in the building at the same time, which we don't think is advisable at this point in time. And then finally, the next Really Goes Green rolling update will be at your next board meeting, which is on September 20th. Prior to the September 20th board meeting, there'll be an advisory group meeting, which is already scheduled for September 9th with the 20 people I had mentioned earlier. So, and I put that photo there because that's actually, we're doing virtual meetings with the number of people that we have in the advisory group. Felt that was the wisest course and it fit people's schedules better because they're at different times. We'll be meeting at 5 o'clock actually for this next meeting. So that is my update this evening.
Thank you, Jeff. I was am part of the advisory group, so I was part of this whole conversation from start to finish that got us to today. So I wanted to open it up to the board who may have questions. So I don't know if the best way to just go down the line. Tom, do you have anything?
I do. The first question that comes to mind is about the advisory group. I know that we had some emails going back and forth about this, but is there an opportunity for us to view these conversations? I know I would feel more informed about my future decisions if I knew what was going on in these discussions.
You mean like a recording of the meeting? Or
yeah. I mean, I don't feel any need to contribute, but just to hear what people are saying, I think would be valuable.
Yeah, we discussed it. That was the first item basically we discussed after introducing each other. And basically the group felt that a recording of the meeting wasn't necessary. It was an advisory group. However, they felt strongly that minutes should be taken, and we do have minutes of the meeting that we have available, and we'll be sending those out. Person taking minutes was moving, so we didn't have them available right away.
I do want to mention, though, that if you are interested in viewing the meeting during the time that we are meeting, anyone is allowed to do that. So you don't have to be a board member, you can be a public member of the public. You just need to let us know so that we can provide that information for you. So as with any meeting that we have, committee meetings, they are open to the public. So that is one way for people to participate or observe in those meetings.
And are the way to access it, is that made available?
So if you want to access the meeting, you could actually attend the meeting. If you're, as a board member or the board is asking for the advisory group to go back and revisit this topic, I did ask the group and they opted not to do that. I felt minutes were sufficient, but if you're asking,
I think he's asking how does people get the information to attend?
If you just email Fran Prentice and she will send you the link to the meeting. And that's open to any member of the public.
Okay, thank you.
Jennifer?
I guess I just have a question about the pool testing, and at this point, what numbers of people do we have opted in? And you said that we don't need a certain number, but is it, do we have enough that it makes sense to have all of the nurses' time consumed by it? And my other question is, what would the pool testing data look like that you'll be reporting?
Good questions. So we won't know the pool testing opt-in until probably the next board meeting. I'll have that information.
Do we know as of like today how much we have? Because we've kind of had a couple weeks to kind of get people.
So the letter went out today. We didn't get the actual consent link until today.
Okay.
For parents. So
I
parents
thought there was
have to
one that
consent.
was a couple weeks ago.
That was the Buy Next Now one.
Okay.
So parents, if you want to be enrolled in pool testing, you do have to fill out both. It has to be Buy Next testing and pool testing. Both those consents have to be given. So we didn't get the consent link until today. So by the next board meeting on the 20th, we should pretty much know who's participating. And actually, we'll be starting pool testing prior to that, is our first scheduled pool test. So A pool can be as low as 2 people. And again, it's not confidentially revealed. There's no information that's revealed on any of it. And it can be up to 25 people in a pool. A pool could be a class. It could be an advisory group at the high school. It can be whatever it is, but it's a set group that's always tested, and it's set and tested each week, primarily at the same time and day. So I will have that data for you at the next meeting, but we did not have the live link from the company until actually last night today. So.
Okay. And I believe, and I could be wrong, that the link that went out included the high school, but in your presentation it went K to 8?
We did include the high school, and that is an error.
Okay.
So we're trying to see if there is high school interest. Our high school nurse and the nursing team actually asked me to reconsider and just put it out and see what we get for interest at the high school. So especially for unvaccinated students, that would be a very good possibility and option for them.
So essentially the data that we're going to get is that there are, over the like in a 2-week period, we're going to test 500 students. We found COVID in 10 of those students, so something like, is
Yes.
that the process?
Yes,
I'm just
that's
not
the kind of
familiar
data
with
I'll
it,
be
and I was just
reporting.
wondering what kind of data that we're shooting for.
That is the kind of data we're shooting for. I think some of it, I've talked to the nurses, they also want to get into it and say, well, maybe we should be reporting something else too.
Okay, that would
But that was
be
the
helpful,
data.
I think, to understand. So we're getting the right data out of it, so
Right.
that we're making the right choices.
We have 2
We're
nurses.
not, yeah.
We have 2 nurses on our staff that are coordinating, helping to coordinate the pool testing for the entire district. All the nurses are participating and obviously helping out, but we have 2 points of contact in our district, 2 nurses that have taken this on, and we've increased their hours in order to make this work. We're also getting a significant amount of help from the state and from the company that they've contracted with. So, and it is free to any student and any staff member in our district to participate. So we're really encouraging people to do it. It's a free test every week to make sure that you're free of COVID, basically.
Thank you. The only thing I wanted to mention before we go further down the table is that during the meeting, we talked a lot about what are those metrics, and it came up a lot last time about what are the metrics that we're trying to hit on. And as you can see from the recommendation, there wasn't a recommendation for metrics. And one of the things that really stuck out to me in the conversation was that we can't separate community spread vaccinations, that data as well from our district, because it's all one big bubble. So if we only look at high school vaccinations as a metric to reduce or to remove masks, we're really not looking at our full community. And so one of the things I'm hoping is that we can work with our towns to make sure that everyone in our town is accessing vaccinations, testing if they need to, because if we just look at our students and our staff, then we're looking at a small bubble and not looking at our communities as well. So that was just one thing that really resonated with me during that meeting. Go ahead.
Thank you. So just 2 quick questions. First off, I do like the composition that you have for the group. I like the number of medical professionals that have joined, especially folks that have frontline understanding of how these spread. They've been in emergency rooms and they've seen that. I think it's very strong to augment what we have in the district. You made a comment when you had up the slide about the percentages of staff, and you had said there are incentives to report. What are those incentives?
Yeah, so the incentives for staff, for anyone really in schools, staff or students, is that if they're vaccinated and they become a close contact, for example, they do not have to quarantine unless they obviously have symptoms. But if they're asymptomatic, they do not need to quarantine. That's huge. That takes a lot of, at least at the secondary level, it takes a lot of people out of the equation in quarantining. And I know quarantining last year for many students, especially if they got into an athletic team and then they were quarantined multiple times during the year, this is a big incentive for people not to. Also, pool testing is another one. Pool testing, if somebody's enrolled in pool testing, that's another way they can get out of quarantining if they're asymptomatic. So I think those incentives alone have really helped to move the dial so that we don't have people rotating in and out of our schools this year like we did last year.
So when somebody comes on campus as a substitute or as a coach, what protocols do we have in place for the short-time folks?
So we treat those folks the same way. It's optional if they want to give us that information, but if they do give us that information, they will also, if they are in contact with a positive case, they would not have to quarantine or otherwise be out of work.
Well, I mean, outside of the reporting of that, do we have any protocols have we continued with the regular substitutes as we did last year?
We have resumed our regular substitutes because we have all of our staff, well, we had all of our staff or most of our staff last year, but because we have our staff back and we have all of the students, we could not make it work with long-term subs as we did last year. So we have resumed all of our daily subs. And again, a lot of our daily subs have already given us their vaccination information. That's not included in the data I gave you, but they're giving it to us independently. So that's good.
But if they are a daily sub, could we mandate that they give us that as a condition of being a substitute for the day?
We really can't. Anybody who works in schools at this point has to be optional, unless the board does have the authority to say that for the district. But at this time, I have not put that forward as a recommendation. But the state has said, the Commissioner of Education has said that a school board has the authority to do that. The state is not requiring it right now.
Thank you.
Peter?
I don't have any questions, just I can see with the, and probably more specific at this point would be the high school, that I can certainly see, given the incompleteness of the data, that at this point in time we really have no choice but to go along with the superintendent's recommendation. We just don't have enough solid information, and to put on top of that, as I say, today we've got 600 new cases in the state. So again, I think until we get more solid data in the high school, the recommendation that came tonight is legitimate. The second thing is, I am a little taken aback that the district-wide percentage of vaccination is 64% in a county that my understanding is above 90%, and the overall district is 77%. Now, again, some of this may be reporting, but in my opinion, that's not terribly acceptable in my mind, given the level of education and the demographics that we're dealing with in Cumberland County. But again, that's my opinion. I think if there's any kind of a mandated thing, that's got to be something from the governor. There's nothing that, even though we could do it in the district, that's putting too much of a burden on the board, and I don't think it's our case, but it is disturbing. That's all I have.
Thanks, Peter. Mike?
I agree completely with your opinion, Peter. The vaccination rates are incredibly disappointing. I actually would be in favor of making reporting mandatory. I have emailed the Commissioner of Education and the Governor saying that they should do that. I think we can, if you said we can do it, I think we should consider it. I think reporting is not burdensome. To work in a district, you have to be fingerprinted, you have to report all sorts of things. This is not difficult. This is a public health issue. FDA has given full approval of the Pfizer vaccine, so reporting of vaccination, I think, personally, I don't know why it's optional. That's not, I don't know. And I'll stop there. So going to more specific issues, I agree with keeping the parent info nights remote, but I'm interested if there's been discussions or thoughts on specifically parent-teacher conferences. Those are small group settings. Those, judging by CDC recommendations and such, small groups, masks, seems like that would make sense to have that in person. I do think that that would be really wonderful for parents to meet their kids' teachers in person this year. Have you given thought to that?
I will be, that will actually be a topic on the next advisory group, because we start parent conferences in October for some of our grades. So I will be asking for advice so that we can get out in front of parent-teacher conferences next. So that is a topic I already have on my list for the next advisory group. It's important that I bring something forward for that.
Awesome. This is somewhat random, I guess, but I just wonder if we've given, because we're still using the same traffic flow from last year, especially with MIW. But last year I think, had a lot more parents dropping off. Are we sticking with that and having the bus drop off in the library spot? It's just,
we are.
Obviously, we
are. It worked better, and we actually got good feedback from parents that instead of coming into the MIW gym, and there was always, safety issues, and it took a long time because you had to show your ID if a staff member didn't know. And then obviously just the whole piece with COVID and having so many people coming in and out of the building, and making it just a lot more sustainable. Obviously the first week is hard because, we're trying to get used to whose number is who and getting that flow going again, but it should get better. But yes, there's a lot more kids riding the buses. Our buses it's a very different situation this year with busing. A lot of the parents have resumed transportation on the bus this year as well.
Yeah, I'm one of them, and I couldn't be happier to have my kids back on the bus. The only other thing, and this is very minor, but we should think about making our little dais here a U. I feel like Jennifer Stewart's down there, but I couldn't tell you if she is. So.
Yeah, and it's hard to hear also.
Yeah, I agree.
We also need another seat, so when Madison joins us, we have enough room. So.
Oh yeah. Also on the floor. It's okay.
We're working on it. Thank you, Mike. Ann?
I also think that we really should consider making vaccination status required for all of our staff. Again, echoing what Mike said, that it isn't burdensome, that if you are going to be working for the district, you already do have to provide additional information. And then I guess the only other thing that I wanted to speak on was masking. And I know that, we've still gotten some feedback from families who would prefer that we aren't masking, especially at the younger grades. And I understand the difficulties of it, that it does make it harder for our little learners perhaps to read people's facial expressions and feel comfortable in our schools, and they don't want their children to have any harm from that or start to fear school. And I support masking, and at our younger levels, I have a kindergartner and a second grader, and my approach with them, and I'm hoping that this would be something that other people could also agree to, is that, we're not wearing the masks to keep ourselves safe. We're wearing the mask to keep you safe. And that this is just something that we're doing for now. It's not something, that it isn't something to be fearful of, that we need to have that empathy. We need to come together as a community. We can't all be individuals who do our separate thing because we're in a community together. So, just like even how Tyler said, how we can't just look at our school information, we have to look at the information in our whole towns, that because we are going places and interacting with each other and going to the library and town hall and whatever the place is. So there's a place when those strong individual rights, I think, really need to consider how does that affect everyone else around you. Thanks.
Thank you. Jason?
I think if vaccinations are one of the main drivers for how we make our decisions here, then I think it is reasonable to look at the data on a building by building basis, and specifically with the high school. I think that that's a reasonable thing to break out, and I'm hoping maybe Jeff can break that out and continue to follow it that way and present it that way, because I think if we are able to take off the mask at some point, I suspect that it would be a reasonable thing to start with the high school. given that everybody there would be over the age of 12. So I'd like to see that data and follow that, and yeah. I think it's reasonable to establish metrics now, especially for the high school, and sort of a goal. If we get there, what are we going to do? And lay out the data now, and not sort of just wait and keep moving the goalposts. As far as the advisory group, just for sake of transparency, I think it's reasonable to have those posted and recorded and make them fully public and just let people see what's being discussed. There's no reason not to have that out there. I'm disappointed that there isn't a pediatrician on that committee. However, I understand it is difficult to get doctors to put in their time and volunteer in such a thing. I would not be in favor of mandating the reporting. I understand the varied opinions here. I just find that to be a slippery slope, and especially if the state isn't mandating such a thing. I think making something more strict by a lower governing body sort of opens us up to issues. And regarding Cumberland Rec, Scott, I don't know if you can talk about any plans to help with the pickup procedure there, or I know you've talked about that with Pete, and if we can make that any better as far as allowing parents to come in if they're masked and pick up, especially in the middle school, which is essentially empty. Do you have anything you can add to that to help that process be more normal?
Yeah, I don't at this time. Pete and I are still discussing that.
Okay. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Vanessa?
Hi, I'll be quick. I echo Mike, teacher conference in person. I really would like to see that this year because it is in a small group setting. The other thing, removing masks for those that are vaccinated, I think we have to be extremely careful because our middle schoolers not all of them are eligible to be vaccinated. So if we allow the high school, we have a lot of children that cannot be vaccinated. They don't have the choice. Now they're intermingling with students that are vaccinated. They remove their mask. My child, who's not able to be vaccinated, has their mask on. So I think when we get to that point, it should be school-wide, district-wide, that we remove all masks for everybody and not just segregate high school, middle school, elementary school. And I would like to see a pediatrician on this advisory board. I think that's crucial to build the confidence of the community and a clearer definition of where our students need to be.
Thank you. Avery?
All right, so I guess my first question is what data we're specifically talking about to make an informed decision on what mask, like the mask mandate.
Avery, are you asking me?
Yeah.
Okay. I think, so that was the discussion at the advisory group is should we set a marker now for example, masking, and again, I'm making up an example here, but if 80% of the staff and the students at the high school, for example, are fully vaccinated and we have that on file, would that be a marker that we would use in saying that the masking could be removed in combination with a county transmission data status that might be low or moderate? I'm making up an example, but that would be the kind of thing. So the advisory group chose at the last meeting, and they're meeting again, they're going to be meeting, I think, frequently for a while, decided not at their last meeting anyway, not to pursue that. Doesn't mean that it won't be an agenda item. It will be again. It will be a rolling agenda item, and it will be asked again if it's something they want to consider. So, I think I'm going to leave it to them to give me some advice on it, and see where it goes.
All right, so in regards to making it mandatory that staff and students, or at least the parents of those students, update the district on vaccination status. I think it should be mandatory. I think in order to make an informed decision on sort of where we go in terms of masks, in terms of social distancing, that we need that data to move on. And I also want to see mask breaks a part of sort of the daily schedule. Like it'd be nice to say have maybe a 10-minute break in the middle of every class to go outside, take a mask break, get it off your face. And I think that might help relieve some of the stress, especially with the younger grades, that comes with wearing a mask.
Yeah, I just wanted to respond to what Avery said. So I think at the high school, obviously there's not a built-in natural break during the day to go outdoors, except during lunch right now. I know students can eat outside. All the other grades in the district have a built-in, even the middle school 6-8 has a 10-minute kind of outdoor time to be outdoors. And that was changed a couple of years ago so that kids were getting fresh air, et cetera, but that was a natural break. So the high school is the one that doesn't have that unless they're going out, unless students choose to go outside to eat. So that is something I can bring up to the high school as well and see if there's other possibilities. But I think at all the other grades, I can safely say that kids are outside at least once a day.
I just want to say that 10 minutes isn't enough of outside time.
I know.
I agree.
I agree.
And we can do so much better than that. We need to use this time to change the way we look at being outside while on campus. And I know that Mike Williams is committed to doing some of that work. I know that there's a grant that's been written at the high school to improve a club that's maybe partnering with Teens to Trails in Portland. There's so much more opportunity there. So although I know that there's so many other things that happen throughout the day, we've got to be able to, specifically with masks, be able to get kids outside more often. I'm going to say that probably every time we sit here. Does anybody else have anything else to say regarding the Greeley Goes Green update?
So I just have a quick quick question. The 3-foot distancing, if that comes back, are we able to accommodate that now?
Yes, we are. We're set up to accommodate 3-foot distancing if the CDC state, whatever required it, the governor required it or whatnot, if we had to go back into a situation again where it is required. We are set up for that. We have enough teachers and enough space built into our current plan that we can do the 3-foot distancing tomorrow if we had to. Well, tomorrow's not school day, but Tuesday. We can do that. We have a few places, very minor areas at the middle school and the high school where we would have to probably adjust some classes to make sure that we have the 3 feet. But both schools did an amazing job making sure that, all the schools did an amazing job with the 3 feet. But those 2 schools are, you know, they looked at everything, and at this point we left some of the allied arts classes a little bit higher, if, you know, knowing that we can adjust if we had to.
Great, thank you.
Okay.
Oh, Tyler, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
One more thing here. I know we're only 2 days in, but do you have a sense anecdotally about how the plexiglass partitions were received in the eating areas?
Well, I was down at the middle school today. You're talking about the middle school?
Well, it's at the high school too?
Well, the high school, I think, is a little mixed feedback. Avery, you can certainly speak this better. They can go outside. There's a lot of outdoor seating at the high school, and a lot of kids are eating outdoors right now at the high school. And there's actually 3 different areas you can eat inside, and then there's the whole outdoor area. So right now there's a lot of options. At the middle school, because of the constraints of the land right now and just where the cafeteria is situated, kids are eating primarily in the cafeteria. There is plexiglass on the tables. I was in the cafeteria today just to kind of see how the kids were doing. I'm not sure the plexiglass was the reason that they wanted to sit with their friends. And right now, I think at that school, they're just trying some things out with seating, and we always do that at the beginning of the year. to see how things are going. So I think it was less about the plexiglass and more kids wanted to, start eating with their friends and stuff like that. So, but those are decisions that are made as the year begins. Yeah.
Thank you.
That was my sense. And I did ask some kids about the plexiglass, and they didn't seem to, it didn't seem as daunting as I thought either when I was thinking about it.
I'll follow up with the middle schooler tonight.
Yeah, you should.
Look at an earful,
you should.
don't worry.
Avery, I don't know if you have any comments about the high school lunch.
Yeah, so there's the biggest problem with the plexiglass is that you can't hear the people next to you. Like, I know that it's supposed to sort of create a barrier, but if someone's across from you, it's near impossible to hear them through 4 layers or 2 layers of plexiglass. And I think with the masks and, the just things being as they are, it'd be nice if at least there were holes drilled or something like that to let something through, because it makes interaction hard during lunchtime.
Yeah, I can't say that the middle school students had trouble when I was in there, speaking to people on the other side of the plexiglass. But yeah, well, I think it's, we're working it through. We'll see if it's working or not. I don't know, Scott, you've had a lot, you've been asked to do a lot with this topic, so I don't know if you have anything to say either.
No, I don't have much else to add to it, Jeff. I think everybody's talked about it. So, but again, we're just trying to keep students safe, and that's one more measure that's trying to accomplish that. So.
I also think it's important, I recognize this today during my daughter's kindergarten screening, is that although we learned a lot of how to do things last year in COVID land, this year we have everyone back. And so everything may look similar to the way things were done last year, but now we have twice as many kids. And so one of the things I was told was that they're at the middle school working on trying to figure out a schedule for all of the outdoor spaces so that there can be a rotating schedule so that kids aren't just playing at a field, but they can also access the playground. That stuff is just getting figured out. And so we are only on day 2. And so we're learning, I'm hearing that there's a lot of things to be learned even just in 2 days. So there's still some things in progress, I guess.
Yeah, and I think trying to be very cautious at the beginning is the way we wanted to start the year, and if we need to pull back on some things later, we can. The other thing, just to remind people, is that we run 2 different schools out of one facility, so the middle school is really 2 different schools and 2 different programs. So we have 5 lunches that are in that building. We start lunches very early, 10:30ish, and just go right through. And it's just a very busy building. And so we've had to take precautions just for the number of kids, the sheer number of kids that we've got as well. So we also have 7 portable classrooms now on the school grounds at the middle school. And it is, there's a lot of land at the middle school, behind the middle school for play, thankfully, but it does certainly cut into some of the land that we have had at that school. So.
Okay. Anyone else before we move on? All right, so next up is superintendent's report. And Jeff mentioned that this might be long, but it shows what's going on, like the good stuff of what we've all been waiting for to be back in school. So it's exciting.
Yeah, it is exciting to share this. I will say overall that we've had a really good start to the school year. I've been out and about for the last 2 days, and I really have heard very positive things from just about everyone. I know we've had some bumps and hiccups, as we always do in any given year, around certain topics. Certainly transportation's challenging every year at the beginning, because we're trying to make sure, especially the little ones, are getting on the right routes, and drivers are getting to know kids and where they're supposed to be getting off and picked up. And it does take time, especially with the younger students. So we always ask people to be a little patient with us in the first week or so of school so that we can iron those things out. But overall, I have to say we have had a very good start the first 2 days. And so I do have a lot of photos, as Tyler mentioned. We had a lot of really positive activity on the campus. This first photo is just all the 4th and 5th grade students arriving to meet their teachers on the playground yesterday for the first day. This is yesterday as well, Mabel I. Wilson School, students arriving off the bus and being greeted by all kinds of staff that were on the side back you can't see. And some music, nice musical tunes as well at the Wilson School, very festive as kids got off. This photo right here is of the high school. Right in this room, all of the classes had meetings over the last 2 days. Class meetings with Mr. Gray, Mr. Hand, and Mr. Shapiro.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Are we supposed to be seeing the photos behind us?
Well, I think we are.
Sorry to interrupt.
No. Thank you. Thank you for telling me. I didn't even notice.
I don't have that presentation, so because of the link there, I was able to have your own.
Is there another way for me to get it on there, Dark?
I'm not sure.
What is that?
Thank you.
Okay, this is the study.
Sure, this will show up, but we don't need it here.
Yeah, Jeff, you can, we don't need it here, you can share it to the public.
All right. It's a blog, Dirk, so it's hard to share, but I'll try. It's on blog post. There it is.
If we can't figure this out in a minute or two, I think maybe we'll move on, because we do have a lot left to our agenda. All right, Jeff, you're up there. Me too.
Okay, great. I think that's the last one, though. Yeah, this is a preview one. So at this point, I'll just continue.
So we'll get out of the way, so. No, it's something with it. It isn't? No.
No, that's not the right one.
And Jeff, you can say you usually post these the day
I
after.
do. Yep,
So
this will
you
be.
can follow along tomorrow.
Yeah, I apologize, it's not on the screen. What we will be doing is posting this blog on Tuesday. We usually post it the next school day, and make sure that people can see it as well. I apologize, it's not up there. We'll have to figure out, make sure this gets up there. But anyway, I have a bunch of photos from the beginning of the school year. Just want to remind people we have free breakfast and lunch as well for all students. We'll have more information coming out in a letter from the food service department. Over the summer, we had a lot of things going on the campus, obviously, to get the campus ready for the school year. We have a lot of our staff that were here, Camp Friendship, which is a program for students who are in need of extended year programming, tutoring, credit recovery programs, our custodial and maintenance staff, which is supervised by Don Foster and Carl Rowe, deep cleaned every nook and cranny of our district. We had 11 modular classrooms that were getting prepped and placed on the campus, of course. The transportation facility was being completed, or it's actually still being completed right now. But pretty much, I'd say a couple weeks away from being in move-in status.
Jeff, if you could put it back on
go. And I want to give a lot of thanks to, at the Transportation Garage, to Phil Blake, who's the supervisor of the Transportation Department, and Larry Lair, who's a mechanic, and Rachel Swenson, who's the assistant transportation supervisor or director down there as well, as Scott Poulin, who's director of operations and has overseen all of these amazing projects that get done magically within, pretty much 9 weeks each summer. And so the photo, if it comes up on the screen, is of the 3 of them at the new transportation facility. I will be showing you at a subsequent meeting photos of the new transportation facility, which we share with Public Works in the town of Cumberland, and that's a joint effort, as you know. And also to show you some videos of how the transportation facility actually works. It's a great new asset to our school district, and I think it will probably end up saving money in some ways, even though we'll be obviously paying debt on that. And I also like to thank the technology department, which is supervised by Dirk Van Kuren, for all of the cleaning of devices, every device in this district, technology device, deploying of new devices, we've got hundreds of, mounting tech equipment in the modulars, et cetera, et cetera. It's just a lot of work. And finally, I'd like to thank our district office staff, which works all summer, including our support staff and administrators and our administrative team and our buildings in the district for working all summer for staffing, placement schedules, planning, closing our budget year out, opening a new one. There's just a myriad of stuff that goes on each summer. Scott, do you have anything you want to add about summer stuff? Or
No, just it's like a hamster wheel and it never ends. We just, every summer it's pretty busy, so.
It is a busy place. And also on the blog, I'll have photos of all the additional learning spaces that we've added. Thank you for the board's support on having 11 modular classrooms on our grounds between the middle school and Mabel I. Wilson School. The photos will show what the interior of some of those rooms look like. I just snapped a few photos to show you an example. Huge amount of work on the exterior to get grass going, tar, rehab the outside and inside of these buildings. So that they're really in great shape. I actually ended up talking with, I would say, vast majority of the teachers and staff that are working in the modular classrooms throughout the district. And we now have 21 modular classrooms in our district. And all seem to be pretty pleased with the way that they came out and are good learning spaces for kids. So, yeah, and Scott would like to add something.
Yeah, just that the person who did an incredible amount of work this summer was Dawn Foster on ensuring that all that site work got done, that working with Schiavi to ensure most of that was set and in place. The contractors that we worked with, everybody from Doughton to Story Brothers, to Story, Mike Story. It was an incredible feat this summer, and also technology, ensuring that we were getting all the technology devices in there. There's everything from phone, internet, alarms, there's trenching that has to be done for a sprinkler system, so it's it absolutely is incredible what happens over the summer here, and and I don't want to minimize the work that those folks have done.
Yeah, I'm just throwing thank you, Scott. I'm just throwing some of those photos back up since they're on the screen behind me now for folks that would like to look at them. Again, I'll be putting this out so that people can have a chance to look at all this. Just moving on real quickly, we had a home football game. It's the first time, I believe, in 3 years. Just trying to remember when the last one was. We've had a co-op team with Falmouth, and all the games prior to COVID were played on the Falmouth field, but we negotiated this year. Thank you to David Shapiro, our AD, who negotiated with Falmouth to make sure that we had at least one home game this year on our campus. We have 3 varsity students from Greeley who participate in the Falmouth team. So we had a huge turnout. This was last Friday evening. Right here in our field. It was a beautiful night, actually. It was nice and cool, and sun was out until the lights went on when it got a little darker. It was a great night. It was nice to see all all the people that came out, especially the students, to watch the game, kind of looked more like a normal football Friday night under the lights. And here's another photo. They played South Portland that evening. And basically, it's whatever team you can get right now to play football. So I think it was great that the South Portland team was able to get up here. I'd like to welcome all of our new staff. We have a lot of new staff in our district this year. One of the reasons we have so many new staff is that we, because of our Greeley Goes Green plan, we hired 10 additional teachers this year for 1 year only for teaching. And I'm sorry, this link isn't working. It will work. When the blog goes out, people can click on it and see photos of all of our new staff and the positions that they are in. And then for a spotlight for the Greeley Goes Green, I wanted to just spotlight a staff development workshop this week. One of the 3 pillars, obviously, is social emotional learning this year. In our 4th and 5th grade staff, the entire staff, participated in several sessions. In fact, I participated for a good portion of that time in community building and community circles, and focused on the topic of belonging and every child having a sense of belonging in the classroom, which is something we do every year, but just an extra emphasis on those best practices for social emotional learning. And it was really well done. Great job being led by Katie Campbell, Allie Waterhouse, and Carol MacArthur at the 4-5 school. Class of 2022. Well, this is our senior class. And Madison's not here tonight, but class of 2022, right before school began, I'd say probably half the class was able to get down to Scarborough Beach and just enjoy a few hours together at Scarborough, outside at the beach. It was a beautiful day. Just connecting and kind of getting ready for the year. We know that senior year can be hard anyway, but we want to make sure the seniors feel supported, and we know that high school has been hard for a lot of kids, and just want to make sure that we have a good senior in place for this group. And then outdoor learning, we have all kinds of things going on, and again, thank you to Scott and our maintenance department for making sure that keeping track of this stuff and keeping up with it. We have tons of picnic tables, and thank you to Avery Olson, our very own student school board member, for making a lot of benches. We have park benches that were paid for by federal funds, picnic tables made by Avery, and then we have regular picnic tables, the pavilion, and actually these spaces are being used pretty much the first 2 days constantly. We also have the amphitheater, so there's a lot of options and tons of tents, and these are good grade tents that won't blow away in the first wind. These are Army grade tents. These are the ones that will last. So we're really excited about it, and they've been really well utilized. Finally, I'd like to just say the Teens to Trails, and Tyler actually was participating in helping with that, and I think Mike Williams as well participated in helping the high school to secure $1,500 for a Teens to Trail grant. So that was awarded this week by the Department of Education. That will get us started on getting some of our teenagers outside on trails during the school day, and also, well, mostly after school hours through a club. But I think it's a great way to get that interest going.
I just want to interrupt and say that Dan Westhoven did all of the
Thank
work
you.
for the grant during the summer when he was not even here. So he shared that with us, and that Mike and I are here to support him in whatever he needs going forward. But he did all of the work for that over the summer.
Thank you for saying that. Dan did a great job with that grant and writing it, and he will be implementing that grant at the high school. So we're really excited that we can get going on that with some seed money. And again, these are just pictures of outdoor spaces, and again, over the last 2 days, they have been well utilized. I'm really excited to see kids and teachers out there. And finally, I just added this tonight because I just found this out an hour ago. Congratulations to Heather Gagan. She is one of our PE teachers here at the high school. She was just named today, actually, the state's high school PE teacher of the year by the Maine Association of Health Physical Ed. in recreation and dance. So I want to just thank and congratulate Heather for that distinction. So anyway, that's my update. Oh, I had a couple others. People asked me about this, so I wanted to make sure it's not on my blog. This is very preliminary, and I'll have an enrollment report for the board at our next meeting. But the first 2 days, I always caution people not to hang too much of your hat on these enrollment numbers. But we have, as of today, our enrollment is 2,132 students. For the district, 608 students at the high school, 468, grades 6 to 8, 327 at grades 4, 5, and 729 students at Mabel I. Wilson School. Again, those numbers will shift over the next 2 weeks. Part of it is records between districts when kids move and things like that. So it'll be a couple weeks before we have some more solid numbers. But that's our preliminary numbers. I have been asked to report on staff vacancies. At this time, we still have a number of staff vacancies, mostly due to late resignations, and mostly educational technicians. So we have 11 vacancies currently in the area of special education. We have a bus driver that we're still trying to fill, I think, at this point. Some of these are in process, some of these aren't. We have a custodial position that's still, we're still looking for, and a food service worker, and we have an IT position as well that we are still trying to fill. So those are the vacancies that we're starting the year with. And again, we had a lot of late resignations. I've checked in with my colleagues, educational technicians. It's been challenging to keep positions filled in so many districts in Maine right now. The labor market is really good. So we're struggling to fill those. And then every time we fill one, someone else resigns. I expect that will stop at this point now that school has started. But we were having those right up and through, even a couple days before school began. And then immunizations, other than COVID, so these are immunization compliance. I just want to say thank you to all of our families who pulled through for us. We had over 60 students who were not up to date on their regular immunizations, not COVID. In order to start school, the state law changed this year and requires that students cannot start school on the first day unless their immunizations are up to date, and that's a state law. And philosophical exemptions and religious exemptions are no longer allowed in Maine unless a student is on an IEP, and then there's some waiving that can happen, but that has to be done through the IEP process. So anyway, we had over 60 students that were not in compliance 2 weeks ago, and I'm thankful to say that today it's 7. And we are working with the 7, so to make sure that we get those kids to school, so individually. So that's my report.
Thank you. Okay, moving into committee reports. Kevin, Finance?
Thank you. Nothing profound to report. We continue to look at everything and continue to take a look at all the warrants that come before us. And yeah, that's where we are.
Great, thank you. And policy?
I do have a couple of updates this evening for policy. And the first is that myself, Policy Chair Tyler McGinley, and Superintendent Porter met with legal representation from Drummond Woodsum this week virtually regarding policy ACA, diversity, equity, and inclusion in education. They've had a chance to review our policy and found that the draft we had initially presented had a lot of language that would be better served in the equity plan versus the policy. So the policy will be going back to the equity committee for some rework before coming back to policy. We will keep the public updated because it seems like we might have a shift then in how we involve public input, that it might be more input for the plan, though still wanting to provide the opportunity for input on the policy. And then I also just wanted to comment on the vote to change communications and equity leadership steering committees from special committee / ad hoc committee to other board committees. This is really just a house cleaning process. All of last school year, policy committee had reviewed all of the policies relating to the board and our work. And at the time, we just didn't know that there were some additional policies that could serve us and could help us clean up things until Tyler had gotten some help from Steve Bailey. So we'll also be working on bringing in a new policy, hopefully, for board advisory committees, BDF. And at this time, the work that our equity leadership steering committees and communication committees are doing are more adequately defined by other board committees. This change does not affect anything about how the committees operate, and it's, again, just really a matter of cleaning house. Thanks.
I have a quick question. So within the policy, the other board committees, just so I have a little bit more clarity, is appointed by Tyler or the executive chair if it is to move to be a standing committee. And currently, right now, we re-vote for equity.
So I wonder if we can keep this conversation or discussion for when we do the motion.
Okay.
I just don't want to get lost in that.
Okay.
If that's okay.
Great.
All right,
Nope,
cool.
that's fine. I didn't know when it would be appropriate.
Thank you.
Tyler, just quickly, as the acting chair of the Communications Committee, I just wanted to say I completely agree with what Ann said about the housekeeping process. Oh, man, I'm tired. That this is a housekeeping issue. So similar with communications. That's all I wanted to say.
Okay, thank you. Ann, did you have anything further?
No, I
No,
did not.
okay. Curriculum, we do not have anybody from that committee represented yet. We are finalizing our committee assignments on the 8th when we have our retreat, so we should have an update from that committee, I would hope, in early October. Student reports, Avery?
Yeah, the first 2 days of school have gone well. Everyone's happy to be back. People sort of accepted sort of this, masks, after having a year of being with them. And, everyone's happy to see people they haven't seen in 18 months.
Awesome. Thank you. Okay, moving on into items for action. The first item we have is to appoint our district physician. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Thank you. I'd like to open this up for discussion, as I know this is a topic that has been gone around, and we've had some public comment as well. So would anyone like to speak regarding this? Jennifer?
Okay. I would like either you, Tyler, or Jeff to speak more in-depthly about the process of how we use the district physician and really kind of get into the details. I think it was brought up in more detail to the board on where we lean on the district physician at this point, and what decisions are really done just by the nursing staff or the administration, and I think that would help the community.
Sure. I'm going to ask Jeff, you know more of the intricacies than I do for
Yeah,
that.
I'll start, and I think Scott would he also works closely on this topic, and I'll ask him to also talk about it. But the district physician in most typical years, before COVID anyway, was a resource to the district who we did not call on very often because it was primarily for if there was a question that a nurse had about a prescription that they needed just to get some general information about. If there were questions about, we utilize the physician for things like, airflow in a building, or checking on a concern or complaint from someone about some sort of a health issue. We might consult with the physician. But generally speaking, the physician was just someone that we used as a resource. When COVID-19 occurred, our need to rely on the district physician grew exponentially. And we needed to have somebody that we were able to have as a resource on a very regular basis. And when I say regular, I mean weekly and sometimes more than once a week. We were calling on this person to attend meetings. The issue with the district physician is that most physicians are extremely busy, and they are not available except for a very brief consultation. So the district physician's role in the last 18 months has been one that we have needed, somebody more available to us, providing advice. It's not decision-making, it's advice to the nurses, to the administration, to myself, in making decisions or making recommendations around health and safety and being a resource for us. So I will say that the role of the physician has changed quite a bit in 18 months. I think when the pandemic continues to wane, the role of the physician will probably revert back to more what it looked like prior to the pandemic, and not needing that physician as much as we have needed that person in the last 18 months. But Scott, I'd like you to weigh in as well, because you've had a lot to do with the health team in the last year.
About the physician that we're recommending, or about what the physician would
I
actually
think
do?
Jennifer was wondering if I got it right, the role of the physician?
No, you're correct on that, Jeff. And, you know, there are not physicians lining up to do this work. We were fortunate enough to find somebody at the 11th hour last year when we lost our district physician, who came in and filled in for us, and quite frankly did tremendous work over the course of the summer so that we were able to open school, have cohorts, and advise us through the school year. The district physician is not a decision-making position. And as you know from last year, I facilitated the health team, and many of those decisions were made by the district at the recommendation of the health team and at the doctor and others. So while some people have been, you know, faulting the physician that we've had at times, we know that that's been out there. Dr. Chuck, Dr. Desais has been amazing to work with, and has not really taken compensation for this position. And so when we look at the $3,000 that he felt that we should pay him something, that's a really minor cost for the week in, week out, constant help that he gave us in order to keep students and staff safe last year. So that's you know, we shared a lot more on that and where we were at. He's done great work with our nurses. The nurses have never had that kind of resource before that he's provided. We've had physicians in the past who have been much like what you've talked about, Jeff. And, you know, our current physician is the physician for Falmouth, Bonnie Eagle, and Baxter. So, you know, we quite frankly, last year, had to truly convince him to join us in order to help us.
Yeah, I think, I mean, obviously, you know, with the discussion about the advisory group, we moved in a little bit different direction with the health team, set up this year that we wanted to have an advisory committee directly to me. And we also streamlined a lot of decision-making in the district, right to the district office this year. Not that we weren't heavily involved in a lot of decision-making, but because there was so much minutia of health decisions and contact tracing and things like that, we needed a health team, internal health team, set up last year. This year, it's different, and we're able to bifurcate a lot of things out and get some more external assistance. So the district physician is now one of 4 physicians that the district is consulting with truly as part of this advisory group. And that is where the bulk of the advice that we are getting now, as well as our 2 RNs who sit on the group, and we have a group of 5 RNs who work in our district, 2 of whom sit on this group.
What I saw from our last advisory meeting was that the physicians were all aligning together with where we were heading and what we were doing. So there was no discourse between the physicians. They were pretty much reinforcing what we were doing.
Mm-hmm.
Jennifer, did that answer your question? Okay. Does anyone else have any comments or? Go ahead, Kevin.
Sure. Thank you. So a few of these, and gentlemen, thank you for weighing in. I think that definition of the role is critical, because what we're talking, this is, I mean, the way that this motion is written, it is the district physician and health officer. And of course, I think I've asked you 2 gentlemen and anybody else that'll pick up the phone, what is that role? So some of those things like writing a prescription for an EpiPen to have in a building is one of those roles. Mm-hmm. In discussions that we've had, I've asked that question, would we have arrived at a different decision last year with a different district physician? And really the answer was no, because we followed what the state's regulations were. And what was absolutely quintessential to the opening of school this year was to ensure that we were prepared and we had the options that we should have for the community to be ready to go to 3 feet. And it was not an outcome of the physician. It was funny, I looked at a number of the videos from last year of when Dr. Desai weighed in and helped us to understand the decisions that we were making. And the very first meeting, the gentleman was a rock star, and everybody thought that he really cut to the chase and helped people to understand very profoundly. But then when his feedback was continue to stay the course and not change that, that's when the perception of the district doctor changed, in my opinion. So I think that you've done a couple things that are solid. I think that he has served us well. I think that you have brought on some other subject matter experts in your advisory team. And I think I'm looking forward to see how they will work in concert with each other with the 5 RNs on staff.
And can I just say one more thing?
Yes,
And
yes.
it's more actually off of the topic a tiny bit, but I know that several people have made comments on the board, and I thoroughly agree with the comments that we should have a practicing pediatrician. I will say that we have made efforts to get a practicing pediatrician on the advisory group. I have struck out more than once in trying to persuade very reputable people to consider the task, but I'm very pleased with the physicians that we do have on the advisory group. They're very, renowned in their field, really. They've dealt with COVID many times over and have an incredible wealth of knowledge about COVID and public health. And so I know that there's a concern that we don't have a practicing pediatrician in the referral group, but honestly, the caliber of the physicians that we've got, including our school physician, and the other 3 physicians, I don't have a concern at this point that we don't have enough solid medical advice that we're seeking.
Thank you, Jeff. Mike?
Yeah, thanks, Tyler. I've struggled with this. I appreciate appreciated the letter from the community, from a number of parents. It's very well laid out and very clear and thoughtful, and specifically the notion on how we need to have a board-certified pediatrician. I appreciate that point. I think it makes a lot of sense, and I think it's something we should continue to strive to do. I appreciate that you've reached out and tried to get a pediatrician on the committee, Jeff. It's something I hope we will continue to try. The one thing I just want to note, I know we, and again, another appreciation that the gentleman said he didn't want to look backwards, but I think we should. Consider that, that the ad hoc committee was contentious and at times problematic. I wasn't happy. I don't think many people were terribly happy with how it went over. And so I think that I was actually one of the people who asked a question of Dr. Desai, and I didn't appreciate it. But that being said, the notion that he's not qualified, I don't agree with that. There's many places in our country, especially rural places, even in Maine, where there aren't board-certified pediatricians anywhere nearby. They don't have pediatric care. What they have are people who practice family medicine, and Dr. Desai practiced for decades. So he worked with school districts for, at this point, decades. So the gentleman is quite qualified, and I agree with how Kevin phrased it. I thought he handled the initial meeting quite well. He came back after the committee meeting and improved, but that we should acknowledge that was a contentious meeting, series of meetings. Didn't go terribly well, and people are right to not be terribly happy. But where we stand now and how we go forward, Dr. Desai is incredibly qualified. And generally kind and smart, and so I don't have a problem voting to approve him. I do think that we need to continue pushing forward and looking to get a board-certified pediatrician, but in this instance, I don't think it should be a hang-up for us.
Thank you, Mike.
One quick question. During these advisory team meetings, are the other 3 doctors will always be present?
So we've only had one meeting, and 2 of the doctors were present because the third one, we picked him up this week.
Okay.
So he agreed to join the group and will be joining our meeting next week. So we'll thankfully have a full roster of health professionals.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Jason?
Not being on the ad hoc committee, I found it helpful to hear from Jeff and Scott during one of the sessions that we had there about this doctor, and it's kind of a really tough situation to find anybody that's willing to dedicate that much time for $3,000. So I think really if we want to get serious about changing that position, I think really you got to talk about changing the pay and the process a little bit. And again, also what I heard was that the decisions really came down to administration and this board, and the doctor was just advising. That said, I would like to hear more diverse presentation of the data sort of on both sides and the opposing views, and even if he doesn't agree with it, to sort of dispute it logically with facts and why certain things don't make sense. And also I think that ideally we'd have somebody that was a pediatrician, but again, acknowledging the pay and how hard that is to get somebody to step up. I understand. That's all I have.
Thank you. Avery?
Yeah, so I think that even if we did have a practicing pediatrician, that's a very demanding job, and they may not be able to put forward the dedication or the time needed to properly advise the district and the superintendent.
Thank you, Avery. I'd like to say that it was very helpful to hear how the district uses this position, that rhymes, and it's different than I think what a lot of the public has expected out of that. And I also think to assume that every pediatrician is better prepared for COVID than a family practitioner is something that I think is not something that would be successful for us. No pediatrician knew exactly what to do with all of this. So I think a family practitioner that has years and years of practice is something that we should acknowledge. I do acknowledge the concerns that were shared with us. I've had many conversations. I agree with much of what Mike said, that we appreciate a lot of what has been shared. And it's a difficult position to be put in, but I do think that Dr. Desai is the right choice. And I do think that balancing that out with other professionals, specifically meeting as often as we are, is really a good answer to those concerns. So unless others have, yeah, Ann.
I mean, I only had one quick comment that hasn't really been said already, and that is, I guess, even though I will be voting to recommend Charles Desai as our doctor, that doesn't mean that I didn't really sit down and listen to the people who told me we need someone different. It's not quite so simple as that, and I wish that it was.
I concur with that.
Can I add one more thing?
Yes, please.
Yeah, I just want to let people in the community know and others know that I personally am very grateful to Dr. Chuck for the work he did for us last year. We were floundering in July, and this gentleman came forward and helped this district immensely, and I want people to know that I am thoroughly grateful to Dr. Chuck for stepping up.
And you mean July of 2020, right?
July of 2020.
Not this July. When COVID was first out.
And I'm just thoroughly grateful to him, so thank you.
Thank you, Scott. Okay. So moving back to the vote, all in favor?
Is there any? I can't
Any
see if this
opposed?
is-
And Tyler, we should clarify that this is an ongoing, this is just for a time frame, also that we're approving this.
It's an annual
Right, and
appointment.
it's not just stated, so just to kind of understand that.
Oh, because it's not stated in the recommendation, is that what
It
you're saying?
isn't.
Okay.
It should be.
So the language should say that this is an annual position.
Yes, we have to bring it annually. It hasn't always been brought annually, and I will be honest about that part, that we haven't always had a physician that we can bring to you annually. It's sometimes been a practice that we have been using, and not a physician necessarily, so it's whoever has been kind of assigned to the district. But yes, we even a practice we should be bringing forward annually, and we certainly will be.
Thank you. So moving to item B, do I have a motion? You could read the motion, or I can. Doesn't matter.
So moved.
Okay.
Do you want me to?
Sure, why don't you read it?
Okay. To clarify procedure for membership, I move to clarify the procedure for membership appointment of other board committees in the board's bylaws to line up with language for steering committees. Standing committees, there we go.
Thank you. And a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. So Vanessa, is this motion where your question lies?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
So, when it comes to changing the communication committee and the equity committee, leadership steering committee, it is now going to be a standing committee that the executive chair will appoint people to that.
Well, it's a little confusing, and I will tell you that I've spent a good amount of time digging through policies and bylaws and being on the phone, because this was a vague area, and I'm glad we found it. So our bylaws, and hopefully people have read those, but our bylaws have a section where it states standing committees. It also states that under standing committees, the board also has other board committees, which is defined as the board also appoints representatives to serve on other district committees essential to the operation of the district, including but not necessarily limited to curriculum and facilities. So it's standing, but it is a separate, so it's different in that it's not considered a standing committee, it's called an other. I wish there was a better term. We did ask if we could call it something different, but based on the bylaws that we are given, that is the term that it is falling under.
Well, and also when this previous board reviewed the bylaws, we also went through that trying to see if there was any other way, even before this issue, obviously, if there was any other way that we could delineate the differences between the committees besides just other, and unfortunately, there wasn't.
So it's going to, the communications committee essentially will run parallel as if it's the finance committee and be governed underneath that. Okay.
That's different. So that would be a standing, finance and policy.
Okay.
Other would be curriculum and facilities, and we are recommending or voting tonight to add communications and equity to that other category.
And who appoints those people to those other?
So regardless of any committee, whether it's called other, ad hoc, or standing, the chair appoints any board members to those committees. It happens annually at our retreat. So that's one of the confusions about this, is that this doesn't change any sort of appointing. It just classifies our committees in the correct way under our bylaws. And it also recognizes, and I think this is important, that equity is not a task-oriented committee. As of right now, equity committee has been looked at as an ad hoc committee. So it is my belief, and I believe the district also supports this, as a board, we voted 3 different times to continue to have equity part of the strategic plan.
So when you, every year it will come up to be
It can,
voted.
the board can choose to do what it would like to with those committees.
With the ad hoc committees.
With ad hoc. Now, during this process, I also did realize that we do not have an ad hoc specific policy that we can go back to as a foundation on how these committees work. So during my conversations with Maine School Board Association, they have shared a sample policy with us for those ad hoc committees, which is something I've passed along to the policy committee that I would recommend that we adopt, so that all of our committees have a foundation on how to move forward, how it's reviewed, how the board manages or interacts with those committees, and so forth.
Okay, so the ad hoc committee, when is that going to be coming up for vote if we continue to do that?
That would be up to the policy committee. I'm not sure what they have in front of them as far as when that would come to us for a first read.
I know it's you know, something that we'd like to get to sooner, but there are some things that had changes due to statute that we have to address first.
Okay, so the communication committee, the equity committee, and what other ad hoc committees would be coming up for vote with the board for the year to either continue those committees or stop them?
That's item C, isn't it?
No. So item C is when we're going to talk of when we are voting about those two.
Yeah.
If the board wants to review other committees in the future, once we have an ad hoc policy in place, that's something that we can bring to the board.
All right.
And we
Now
often-
I'm perfectly
we
clear
often-
and understanding.
I'm sorry.
It's really confusing.
No,
You are
I-
not
I-
asking wrong questions.
No, I've researched this and I've looked at it multiple different ways, and I just want to be perfectly clear when we change a policy like this and bylaws.
Okay.
Thank you.
Awesome. I'm glad I was able to answer your questions. Anyone else that would like to speak or have feedback about this motion?
So the equity committee, what has it been the last 2 years officially?
It has been it hasn't been really allocated to either of these because we don't have an ad hoc policy. So it would be a special committee, but it hasn't technically been adopted in either of those places.
It was, a couple of years ago, it was created by the board. It was appointed by the board as part of the strategic priority process. And when the strategic plan was amended at that time, the board chose to create this group. So it's been kind of on an ad hoc basis informally through the strategic plan. But by your bylaws, it really has to come up annually if it's going to continue being going to be a ad hoc group.
Is that all you had, Jason?
Well, I find I'm frustrated. For an unofficial committee, it's had quite an effect on our community. I agree that the committee's definitions need to be cleaned up, but this part of it is just a small part of it. I think that all committees and the way that they're formed and the way that they're maintained and the memberships are assigned and members chosen, it needs a bit of an overhaul. And I think that the way that the system is made right now, with essentially all of it coming down to the chair, is terribly unbalanced and undemocratic. And even if you just look at the anecdotal evidence of what has happened in our community, I would say that this approach doesn't help. And before we move forward with this, I would say let's make it part of a greater overhaul of looking at the entire process, and not do this now. Wait until after the retreat and after we talk about goals. And I can't imagine why a couple more weeks is going to make a difference, given that the equity committee has apparently been functioning for 2 years as not a real committee. I just don't know why this has to be done right now, and I think it needs to be part of a larger process to make things appropriate so that there's some checks and balances in place. I just don't want to keep doing things in this town that divide because they're so one-sided. I think good legislation should be almost gridlocked so that the things that move forward are well-balanced and have solid input from both sides.
Okay, so first, can you please put your mask on appropriately over your nose? Thank you. And secondly, this is a response to making sure that we are doing things correctly. I have heard from so many people in this community that they want to know how these things work. And so I have had to work on this for the past, for a while now, and this is why this has been brought up now. We are actively setting committee membership assignments next week by the board. We are asking our committees to meet and report out to the board for work that's being done on a daily basis in our district. Waiting would further push this committee and communications committee and other committees, for instance, on special committees, in a place that was consistently in a gray area. So waiting, in my opinion, is not appropriate, and why I continue to ask the board to vote on this.
I just wanted to note that the notion of a special committee or an ad hoc committee is not exclusive to the Equity Leadership Steering Committee by any stretch of the imagination. Just as an example, the Outdoor Learning Committee was created as an ad hoc committee, and it helped drive the expenditures of a couple $100,000 of some, I think, really good projects. Ad hoc and special committees aren't just random things created. They're explicitly denoted by the board as a priority at this time to create a committee to work on an issue, but noting in not creating it as a standing committee, and I wasn't on the board at the time of creation of this, but that it's not necessarily something that should be there forever. And so I think that's where the differential is. I agree with Tyler that it's time to clean this up, because the bylaws around here the fact that there's nothing connected to it, I don't think that works. But there's this notion that the Equity Leadership Steering Committee was some random committee that had major consequences. Oh my goodness, that's an exception. That's not true. There are many committees that were created by edict of the board. This was one of them, and it gave advice to the board. It put out notice and has meetings and so on and so forth. So that's the only thing I wanted to add.
Thank you, Mike.
I don't know, I understand and appreciate the frustrations, though I wonder, is it really people feeling upset at the Equity Committee as a whole, or at the statement that we issued in June of 2020? And we issued that statement because we live in a predominantly white community, and we were witnessing just more horrific anti-Black trauma that happened so close to each other, or at least in terms of news release. And us as a committee just felt like, if we can't say something about this, like, why are we even here? Like, what is the purpose of us starting this work if we don't point out these everyday occurrences that need to stop?
Peter?
Well, I'll weigh in. I don't really have really a difficulty with this particular motion. What is it, item B? Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm fine with that. I think one of the things that we did at last year's retreat, and we had Maine School Management that worked with us, and we really hashed out, really a lot of issues that, we really didn't have a chance to during the year. And I think we hashed out the June 2020 thing, and I think there was some thing is that strategically and everything, it was the right thing to do. If we had it to do over, we might have done some stuff with the language, but I think it was just useful in a more informal thing for the board to hash this stuff out, and I thought we did a good job with that last year. And I just think with 3 new members on the board, that this stuff is that, I don't have a problem just as far as the second one, delaying that a couple of weeks so that the whole board, I think we'll get to the same point at the end, but I think it's important for the fact that we've turned the board over and everything, that I'd like to have this and other stuff hashed out in kind of a more informal thing where we can, again, not be in the fishbowl, but, you know, at the end of the day, we'll probably at the same place. I just think I wish we'd have been able to have this retreat in August where we could have got a lot of this stuff done. We didn't. But I think on the, I'll vote for item B, but I would like a little bit more time for the total board to have some discussion on the other one. Again, I think we'll end up at the same place, but again, that's just my humble opinion.
Thank you, Peter.
And Kevin, I'd just like,
oh,
sorry.
Oh, Kevin and then Vanessa.
Oh, please.
I just wanted to address, Ann, item B could have, and item C, I was just trying to understand the language and how it changes and how the committees are run and how, so it's not, it could be, we could be talking about in item C, the athletic advisory ad hoc committee. So it's just more clarity around changing a bylaw, moving into the items. That's all I wanted.
Sorry, I got distracted.
That's okay.
I think I can probably weigh in on that a little bit. So standing committees, so policy obviously is in finance are your only standing committees. A board of directors, though, in Maine has the ability to add any number of committees to standing committees. You could have 20 standing committees if you chose to have them. But I know over the years, this is when it's come up, the board is stuck with those two, and then everything else is, it used to be called regular committees until legal counsel a couple of years ago told us that's not the right word, use other. So standing committees and then other board committees became the other operative term. And then anything that's beyond that has to be an ad hoc or temporary committee. And a lot of our ad hoc committees were created through the strategic plan, board sanctioned. We also have, and I'm just doing this for informational purposes only, I put it on the screen for the board. We have a lot of committees in this district, probably more than we need, but, and some of them right now are dormant just because of other priorities. But just to kind of give you a flavor of, you know, these committees, most of them are internal committees, or they are external community committees, or they're just staff groups that meet. You know, inside our district and don't involve people outside. They're just groups of alike staff, like all the phys ed teachers meet and all of our nurses meet, et cetera, librarians. But then we have, and these are color-coded for a reason, we have the yellow, which are the board committees, which, you know, these are actual board committees. And then we have the green, which are admin committees that have been set up. And they're for the purpose of getting work done. Some of them were created through the strategic plan, but primarily are admin groups or admin committees that are run by the administration. Doesn't mean just administration are on it. We have a lot of other people. But they're not actual board designated committees. So I kind of just wanted to show the board that your jurisdiction is the yellow, and what you choose to put into standing committees and other committees, and then everything else becomes an ad hoc group. And I know it is confusing, especially if you're new to the board, like, why do we do this? And the board can make a decision and say, we want more standing committees. The biggest, and just to answer Vanessa real quick, the biggest difference, and maybe the only difference between standing committees and other board committees that are designated are that two standing committees have to post their agendas and take minutes and post them for the public. And other board committees don't need to do that. And so I think that's why there's always been this kind of discussion, how many standing committees do we have in our district? Those are formalities that we have to do with those two groups. We can, you know, a committee can choose to, or another board committee can choose to do those things. They don't have to. Those two standing committees, you do have to, you know, post and take minutes. That's kind of the biggest difference.
Thank you.
Kevin?
Now, those standing committees are also the only ones required under statute, correct?
Under state statute, yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I think that that's an important distinction. It's really the only requirement. Look, here's where I struggle, since you asked, is just this. When we are looking at a policy as this board, we have a first read on that. It goes through policy. We have a first read on that. We have the opportunity to spend additional time, ask questions, poke holes as appropriate, come back and make a decision as a board. I don't think bylaws are less important than policies, because if policies govern the way that we do business in this district, bylaws govern the way that we do business as a board. And so, to echo a few of my colleagues, I would say that piece, that we've got a retreat coming up. We can continue to understand this, to continue to understand the impact without having the perception of trying to rush something. Now, this could be any committee. So this just happens to be one of the committees that has drawn a lot of attention in the community. This could be any committee that we were looking to make this distinction. I just want the same rigor put to the way that we govern ourselves as we do within the district. You know, with equity, in a perfect world, equity wouldn't be a committee at all. It would be a way of thinking. It would be the right approach to being civil in our communities, but that isn't the case, and there is additional work that needs to be done, and I'm fully in support of that group continuing to do work. My only additional question is, what becomes gained other than transparency, which is, you know, no small task? What else becomes gained by changing the distinction? Because if I read the bylaws correctly, it doesn't seem like special committees and task forces is a bad definition for any committee. It's just reappointed annually. It does not, in my opinion, diminish the great work that the committees can do. So.
Yeah, I mean, I would add that the superintendent's COVID advisory group is an ad hoc group. It's only, the board created it basically for a year. And if we, you know, I hope that we don't have to have, you know, as much as these are great people, hope we don't have to be doing that a year from now. And that would be an ad hoc group that we just wouldn't be bringing back to the board for approval, or review. Right, I understand what you said.
Can I comment to that? I mean, I think just looking at, I mean, obviously, I understand that I have the opportunity of looking at Maine School Management Association, Board Advisory Committees, Policy BDF, and you don't. But, you know, it does say that unless given a new assignment by the board, an advisory committee shall be dissolved promptly upon completion of its task, or shall automatically dissolve after the board has received the committee's final report or recommendations. So I think the issue with like equity, and even with some of our other committees like communications, is that there's always tasks, that it's not necessarily one single task. It's not like the calendar committee when they were looking at early release Wednesdays or something like that. And in my opinion, that's why it's different and should be moved out of that category.
No, and if I may, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
I think you're spot on with that, Ann. It's not like stacking wood, where you know when you're done, it kind of looks a little bit pretty and everything is all set. That distinction of a special committee, again, in my opinion, this one absolutely meets that definition as responding to what's going on in the community. And I think that in terms of the mandate behind having that committee, it's profound, it's necessary. By changing if the only concern is that it gets dissolved if the work is done, I don't think the work is going to be done. I think it continues to evolve, it continues to be necessary, it continues to be a priority. So under whatever the heading is, I think it would be well served. My concern is having this in front of us today, and you know, that ability to retire back and continue to look at that with a very finite timeline, and come back together, as Peter said, where we can talk about this as a group and land on the right solution. And it may be exactly this, and I am in favor of it.
Yep.
I'm just concerned about not doing it the right way.
Okay. So the only thing I would like to add to the kind of the differentiation between the other and task force is exactly that. Equity, as a district, we have said multiple times, and as a board, and I understand there are new board members here that have not made these votes, but that we have voted, I believe, 3 different times to include equity as a continued strategic priority. And if we don't acknowledge that in our committee work, in our bylaws, then it does look like a task. And it does look like we might be checking a box at some point. So that was my thoughts in regards to the different kind of buckets that it could fall into. I don't believe anyone else has any discussion. I'd like,
Sorry.
because we are voting on this in 2 different chunks. Yeah. So I want to make sure we're staying clear on what we're voting on first.
Right, okay. It will be, I guess it will fall under this C.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if no one else has any,
Jason.
Oh, Jason, go ahead.
So I'd acknowledge what Mike said about special committees and what Ann said also, that, you know, a special committee has a specific task and a time frame. And I would argue that this equity committee, in the way that we've done it and the effect that it's had on the community in a positive way, has not worked. So I would argue that it should be dissolved and that we look at starting over and include diverse thinkers that believe in the goal and have the same good intent and argue about the path to get there. Because both sides of this equation, and I've had deep discussions with both sides, they agree with the goal. I don't believe 99%, or I believe that 99% of this community agrees that equity is a noble goal. What is debated is that the path or some of the approach taken so far actually helps from a psychological standpoint. There's great debate on how we get there. So I would argue that to move forward with this is the wrong approach. You should end this special committee and form a new one, and I would likely change the name slightly and focus on different things. Inclusion, I think, is a good word. Anti-bias is a good word, but you come at it differently from a psychological standpoint. That's it.
Okay.
But then there's also people who say the Equity Leadership Steering Committee is doing an excellent job and is long overdue for being in place. So, you know, there's going to be people who like it and there's going to be people who don't like it. And to say that we need to scrap everything that's happened, I think is short-sighted.
And also, that's not something that we're voting on tonight, and we can talk about that at our retreat.
Just to clarify, I wasn't evaluating the committee.
Right. That's not what we're here to do tonight.
That's not at all what I'm doing. Mine was just simply the procedural piece.
Yep, that's exactly what this is. It's procedural.
Move the question.
Thank you. Do we have, so we've done a vote and we've done a second.
I think
we have not voted on.
No, we haven't voted. We had discussion on item B.
I think
So now.
Jennifer wanted to say something, but I also
I
wanted.
think Tom was going to say something.
Okay, all right, good. Sorry.
So go ahead.
No, I'm good.
Can we make an amended vote to table this?
Oh, hold on. Jennifer, go ahead.
Question's been moved.
Yes. Go ahead, Jennifer. We're still in discussion.
Okay. So I tried to research this on my own. I really don't, I feel as though I don't have enough information to vote on this. I've kind of looked into the information that we have on the website in everything, and I don't feel really prepared for this. And I'm not sure if there's more information that we can have to kind of sort through this on the vote B that we're doing.
What are your additional, okay.
So I guess how this will affect, I mean, we're talking so much about the equity committee, but how will it affect, I believe what Jeff had said is that the committees that will be moving to the other committees, there isn't a need for any sort of minutes or I'm blanking on what the other thing
Posted,
is.
so standing committees.
But I have great concern with the facilities committee being put into that category, especially with where we're moving with the facilities and the magnitude of that work. The communications committee, I believe, that should have that transparency too. So I'm not sure if this is where I can gain that knowledge, and that's all I have, I guess.
Yeah, I would just quickly respond that any committee or the board itself can just say, we really want that group to do that, to have minutes, and much like it was discussed with the advisory group that I have, that, there was a feeling that should revisit the recording of the meetings. It doesn't preclude a group from doing that, it just is not required, that's all. That's the difference. And currently, right now, with other committees, you've got curriculum, facilities, and then we left off negotiations because that is another committee that we've always had.
Right.
That's
And it is task-oriented.
It's very task-oriented, yeah. So those are really your other committees, and then your standing committees are your two, of course, policy and finance. So those are kind of your core committees, and now we're saying the board has got to decide, do you want to move other groups into other and out of ad hoc relationship to the board?
Okay, so since the motion has been seconded, we're going to move forward with a vote.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
I'd like to make a motion that we table this in the following article.
Item C?
B and C. Add both of these to our retreat schedule to discuss, and then look to reschedule a vote on these on the September 20th meeting.
Okay.
Second?
Okay. So all in favor to tabling, having a discussion at retreat, and then bringing back these votes based off of our discussion on September 20th.
You can ask for discussion.
Is there any discussion?
Motion to table is non-debatable.
Oh, beautiful.
Thank you, Peter. Okay, so all in favor? Just me. And I'm opposed. All right, thank you for the discussion. This is confusing. I appreciate that we have additional time. Thank you. So we will then move on to item D, which is approval of professional positions. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
I have one question. In the board packet that we received, it was stated that the person that we're hiring is under contract with a different school district, and where does that stand at this point?
So when that happens, I work with the superintendent of the other district that's sending to us, and we negotiate a timeline that's appropriate.
Has that been completed?
It has been.
Okay. Any other questions or discussion? All right, all in favor? Thank you. Okay, and then a motion to enter executive session, and please read the motion.
Madam Chair, quick question. Do we have to do two of these votes, or can we vote to enter executive session to discuss both items?
We do have to come out of executive, for each topic, you have to come out. You don't have to vote to come out, but you have to vote to go back in for a different topic.
I kind of feel like
Biting my
Robert's
tongue.
rules should be updated.
Yeah, that's.
I move to enter executive session.
Can you read the whole thing?
To discuss property acquisition pursuant to state statute MRSA 4056C.
Thank you. Second?
Second.
And all in favor? Thank you. Okay, so we are back to vote to enter a second executive session. Do I have a motion?
I recommend that we vote to enter executive session to discuss labor negotiations with the MSAD 51 school secretaries, educational technicians, and library technicians pursuant to state statute MRSA 4056D.
Thank you. And a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor? Great, thank you.
I don't think these guys did this.